Muhammad Ali was stripped of his title, his license, and his right to step into the ring for refusing to serve in Vietnam. He was broke, under FBI surveillance, and training in a dilapidated gym in Miami just to keep from losing his mind. The American press was destroying him, calling him a traitor. At this time, a rumor spread through the gym. A butcher from underground fights named Chen Wei, a heavyweight who broke people for money at the docks, was coming there. He did not just want to fight. He wanted to publicly humiliate Ali while he was officially nobody, and prove that all his boxing was just dancing for television screens. The atmosphere inside the Fifth Street gym was thick with the scent of stale sweat and decaying leather, a stark contrast to the bright lights of the championship arenas that once defined Ali's life. The champion spent his hours hitting a heavy bag that felt more like a ghost than a training tool. His movements fluid but heavy with the weight of an uncertain future.
He's serious! This changes
Outside
everything!
the salt-streaked windows,
What now? Let's go,
the
bro!
world
Let's
judged
go!
him. But inside these crumbling walls, he sought a different kind of salvation through repetitive, grueling labor. The rhythm of his footwork provided the only heartbeat in a room filled with the shadows of forgotten contenders. Whispers of Chen Wei's approach turned the usual gym chatter into a chilling silence. This was not a sanctioned challenger or a ranked professional looking for a payday. Wei was a creature of the shadows, a man whose reputation was built on the cracked ribs and shattered spirits of dock workers and street brawlers. He represented the visceral anger of a public that felt betrayed by Ali's defiance. The rumors suggested that Wei viewed Ali's defensive brilliance as a sign of weakness, a lack of true grit that could only be exposed in a fight without rounds or referees. As the sun began to dip below the Florida horizon,
I don't think I
casting
know.
long,
We'll
jagged
see about
shadows
that.
across the stained canvas of the practice ring, the tension reached a breaking point. Every man in the gym knew that Ali was at his most
You two
vulnerable.
listen to me. This is it.
Without
No more
the
excuses,
protection
no more
of the
holdbacks.
Boxing Commission
Fight,
or the
fam,
safety of a
move!
televised event, he was a target for anyone looking to make a name by tearing down a fallen icon. The FBI agents parked in the nondescript sedan across the street saw only a man entering a building, unaware that a collision of two different worlds was about to occur. Ali continued to shadowbox, his eyes fixed on an invisible opponent, while the heavy thud of boots on the wooden stairs announced the arrival of a threat that had nothing to do with sport and everything to do with survival. The air grew cold as the door creaked open, signaling the end of the champion's forced isolation and the beginning of a confrontation that would test the very foundation of his identity. Wei burst into the gym at the height of the training session. With him were a couple of his thugs and a hidden camera concealed under the jacket of one of them. There were no television cameras, only the smell of sweat and a threat in the air. Wei declared that Ali was a coward, hiding behind religion to avoid going to war, and that in a real fight without rules, he would not last 2 rounds. Trainer Angelo Dundee tried to throw them out, realizing that any fight now meant prison for Ali. But Ali took off his jacket. He understood that if he did not answer now, he would lose as a man. The condition was one: closed doors and no witnesses except their own. The heavy thud of the entrance door echoing against the high ceilings signaled a point of no return. Wei stood in the center of the scuffed floor, his massive frame blocking the light, radiating a primal hostility that made the younger boxers in the back of the room freeze in place. The intruders did not move like athletes. They moved like predators entering a cage. Angelo Dundee stepped forward, his voice a low hiss as he warned of the legal consequences. But his words fell on deaf ears. The hidden lens followed Ali as he slowly unwrapped the tape from his knuckles, his face a mask of iron composure. The atmosphere became claustrophobic, the walls of the gym seeming to close in as the few trusted associates present moved to lock the bolts on the heavy oak doors. Every window was shuttered, turning the space into a private arena where the laws of the outside world ceased to exist. Ali did not look at the thugs or the concealed camera. He kept his eyes locked on the man who had questioned his courage. There was a cold, calculated precision in the way the champion prepared, folding his gear with a steady hand that betrayed no fear. The air grew still, thick with the realization that this was not a theatrical promotion or a choreographed spectacle. This was a dark, unrecorded chapter of a man pushed to his absolute limit. Dundee's eyes scanned the room, looking for a way to stop the inevitable. But he saw the look in Ali's eyes and knew that the fighter had already stepped past the point of caution. The thugs positioned themselves near the exits, their faces twisted in smug anticipation of a fall from grace. Ali stepped onto the canvas of the practice ring, his movements quiet and deliberate, beckoning the giant to enter a world where speed met raw violence. The world outside continued to believe he was a man defeated by a system, but within these locked doors, the true test of his spirit was about to begin in a brutal clash that would never reach the morning headlines. The fight started without a gong. Wei did not box. He surged forward like a tank, using his elbows and attempting to pin Ali against the wall. This was not a ring. There were no ropes to provide a spring. Ali tried to use his speed, but the space was too small. Wei caught him with a heavy blow to the body, a sound like wood snapping. Ali slammed into the concrete wall. This was a critical moment. He would either fall and lose everything, or show why he was the greatest. Wei went for the finish, landing a series of devastating blows to the head. Ali was disoriented, real blood, not the sporting kind, streaming down his face. The impact against the cold masonry sent a jarring shock through Ali's spine, momentarily robbing him of his rhythmic footwork. The environment was suffocating, filled only with the sound of labored breathing and the wet thud of leather meeting flesh. Wei sensed the opening and redoubled his aggression, swinging his massive fists with the intent to maim rather than score points. He used his head and shoulders to grind Ali into the stone, negating the reach advantage that had dominated the professional boxing world. Every time Ali tried to slip away, the unforgiving geometry of the gym corners trapped him. A sharp elbow caught Ali across the cheekbone, opening a jagged gash that clouded his vision with a crimson veil. The world began to spin as the concrete behind his head became the only thing keeping him upright. Wei was a blur of raw, unrefined violence, smelling of cheap tobacco and desperation, driven by the chance to extinguish a legend in the dark. The thugs in the corner cheered as they saw the champion's knees buckle, his hands dropping dangerously low as his equilibrium faltered. Ali felt the grit of the floor beneath his boots and the searing heat in his lungs, realizing that the refined mechanics of the ring had no place in this alleyway struggle. He tasted the salt of his own sweat mixed with the metallic tang of blood, a grim reminder of his mortality. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird, but amidst the chaos, a flicker of the old fire remained. As Wei pulled back for a massive haymaker intended to crack Ali's jaw, the champion felt the hard surface of the wall support him one last time. He absorbed a crushing hook to the ribs that would have sidelined a lesser man, his breath escaping in a sharp wheeze, yet he refused to go down. The hidden camera captured the raw brutality of a man stripped of his fame, reduced to the most primal instinct of all. In this airless, forgotten space, the fight transcended sport, becoming a desperate war of attrition where the only prize was the right to walk out of the door under one's own power. Ali's eyes, though swollen and bloodied, began to track the heavy, predictable arc of the giant's limbs, searching for the single heartbeat of an opening that would allow him to turn the tide. Ali switched into survival mode. He stopped dancing and began to hit hard, street style. He used short jabs, sharp as gunshots, smashing Wei's face into a pulp. When Wei tried to dive for his legs to take him down, Ali struck him with an uppercut of such force that the giant flew backward. Ali caught up with him at the wall and unleashed a series of blows that were never shown on TV. It was pure rage. Wei was disoriented, his eyes swollen shut. He was barely holding on to his feet. Ali raised his fist for a final blow that could send his opponent into a coma, but suddenly stopped a millimeter from his jaw. The silence that followed was heavier than the blows that had preceded it. The only sound in the dimly lit gym was the ragged, rhythmic gasping of two broken men. Ali's chest heaved, his knuckles were split and dripping with a mixture of his own blood and the visceral evidence of the damage he had inflicted. The fury that had driven him moments before evaporated, replaced by a cold, devastating clarity. He looked at the man pinned against the brickwork, a man who had come to destroy him, and saw only a broken human being. Ali's eyes, though battered, regained the sharp intelligence that had made him a master of the ring. He stood firm, his feet planted in a way that signaled absolute dominance, yet his muscles began to lose their lethal tension. He realized that a single further movement would transcend the boundaries of a fight and enter the realm of tragedy. The hidden camera continued to whir in the corner, capturing a moment of restraint that was far more powerful than the violence. Wei's head leaned back against the concrete, his breath coming in shallow, wet wheezes as his body finally surrendered to the overwhelming shock of the counterattack. The thugs who had accompanied him stood frozen, their arrogance replaced by a paralyzing fear as they witnessed the true nature of the man they had mocked. They had expected a showman, but they had found a warrior who possessed the terrifying power to end a life and the divine grace to spare it. Ali lowered his hand slowly, his fingers uncurling from the tight, lethal knot they had formed. He stepped back, giving the giant space to breathe, though Wei was too far gone to move. The adrenaline began to recede, leaving Ali with the crushing weight of his bruises and the searing pain in his ribs. Yet he stood tall. He had not just defended his reputation, he had reclaimed his soul in a place where no one was supposed to look. The shadows of the gym seemed to lengthen, wrapping around the two figures as the tension of the life-or-death struggle transitioned into a profound, unspoken realization. Ali had proven that even when the world stripped him of his titles and his stage, the essence of the greatest remained untouched, governed by a code that no government or street brawler could ever break. A dead silence fell over the gym. Ali breathed heavily, his knuckles shattered. He did not finish Wei off, but simply looked him in the eyes. The giant lowered his hands. He had admitted defeat. Angelo Dundee took the film from the guy with the camera, promising to destroy it so that the FBI would not use it against them. Wei, wiping away the blood, admitted, Ali was not just a showman, he was a fighter to the bone. They parted without unnecessary words. The recording of the fight was sent to Ali's private safe for decades. This day did not make the newspapers, but it was then that Ali realized his spirit could not be broken by courts or the government. Now he was ready to return and take his belt back from the whole world. The heavy air began to circulate again as the men in the room finally exhaled, the sound of their collective breath mingling with the distant hum of city traffic outside. Ali turned away from his opponent, his gait steady despite the searing agony in his sides and the dull throb in his skull. Angelo Dundee moved with a frantic efficiency, securing the perimeter and ensuring that no trace of the violence remained for the prying eyes of the federal agents who haunted Ali's footsteps. The physical evidence of the struggle was scrubbed from the floor, and the broken equipment was cast aside into the darkness of the storage closet. Wei stood near the exit for a long moment, his stature diminished not by a loss of size, but by a newfound weight of respect that transcended the bitterness of his arrival. He looked back at the man who had spared him and saw a figure that loomed larger than any championship poster. There was no boastful shouting, no taunting, and no celebration. The victory was internal and absolute. As the bolts on the heavy oak doors were pulled back, the humid Miami night rushed in, cooling the heated skin of the combatants. Ali walked to the back of the gym, his shadow stretching across the canvas as he began the slow process of icing his wounds in the dim light of a single swinging bulb. He understood that the battle he had just fought was a rehearsal for the years of exile that still lay ahead. The secret of this encounter became a foundational pillar of his resolve, a private confirmation that his power remained intact even when his public identity was under siege. The world would continue to debate his politics and his choices, unaware that in a small, sweat-soaked room, he had already reclaimed the crown of his own destiny. He moved toward the lockers with a renewed sense of purpose, the pain in his body serving as a reminder that he was still the master of his craft. The tape was hidden away, a relic of a war that required no audience, and Ali emerged from the gym into the night air with the quiet, terrifying confidence of a man who knew that no force on earth could truly stop his inevitable return to the throne.